Hello, I'm Lizelle Sambury and welcome back to my channel where I talk about all things writing, traditional publishing, and a little bit of reading. And this video is all about pre-order campaigns. So this year I did my very first pre-order campaign for my newest young adult novel, Tender Beasts. And so I figured I would talk about kind of how the process went for me. I'm also going to share some statistics, discuss kind of like if I would recommend other people do it and like how did it work out for me and like what things do I think were good about it, what things do I think were like less good about it, and like would I do it again. So that's what this video is going to be all about. I will put timestamps down below so you can jump around to whatever section works best for you. And I'll also give like a quick overview of what I offered in this pre-order campaign and kind of how I set it up. So if you haven't actually heard about them at all, what is a pre-order campaign? So a pre-order campaign is something that authors will do either by themselves or they might have it organized through their publisher. But essentially it is to create an incentive for people to pre-order the book because pre-orders contribute to your first week's sales, and so the more pre-orders you have, the larger those sales will be. Pre-orders are also really important in kind of like showing your publisher that people are excited for the book and looking forward to it. I am of course talking through the lens of traditional publishing. I'm sure indie pubs also do pre-order campaigns, that sort of thing, but that's not my area of expertise, so I won't speak on it. But that is essentially kind of what it is meant to do, and so that's why they're kind of called pre-order campaigns. Mine is a little bit of a misnomer because it was actually a pre-order and library gift campaign. So essentially if people showed proof of having pre-ordered the book or having requested that their library stock Tender Beasts, I would send them some swag items. And so what I sent them some both Tender Beasts and Delicious Monsters, which is my last year's young adult release. And so they got a Tender Beasts bookmark, a sticker, a embroidered patch, and a signed book plate. And then the Delicious Monsters themes items, they got a signed book plate and a postcard, like a themed postcard. And then everyone who entered was also entered into a larger prize pack that would have one winner that would get a Bear Academy sweatshirt, like the one I'm wearing here. Really exactly like that. They'd get a Bear Academy sweatshirt, Delicious Monsters themed t-shirt, Delicious Monsters and Tender Beasts themed book tote that's reversible, and a Tender Beasts like Bear Academy pennant flag. So those are all the things that I was offering in the campaign. And so I'll go ahead and talk more about my goals and stats and all of that. First, I'm going to talk about the goal of the campaign. So it may seem obvious at first glance that, oh, isn't the goal of campaign getting a bunch of pre-order sales? And not necessarily. And so the reason I say that is because it cost me roughly $1,000 to run this campaign. So that's in like the printing of materials and the mailing and the shipping. And of course, some of these materials I had extras left over. So these are things I can use generally for promotion. So it's not as if they're solely being used for the pre-order campaign, but in general, that was about the cost of it, which means given the amount of people that entered, which I'll talk a bit more when I talk about the actual statistics section, it roughly cost me about $5 per person to do this. And the sale of my book makes me roughly $2 per sale. So spending $5 to get a $2 sale, I'm really losing out on $3 in the end. So if I didn't do anything, I would probably actually make more money. And that's kind of instantaneously because of course there are feelings about, you know, the sales and like drumming up interest, and I'm going to talk about that in a second. But just kind of baseline cost wise, I'm losing money on this campaign. So why did I decide to do this? So For me, this was really about kind of giving a gift to people that had supported my books. So last year when I released Delicious Monsters, it was a bit of a roller coaster ride for me. And it ended up being a bit of a tough time. And I really, really appreciated all of the people that went out and like got a copy of the book and hyped it up and talked about it and pushed it. And I was so appreciative of those readers. And I just kind of wanted something that I could give back to them. So that's why I also included Delicious Monsters items in this whole pre-order campaign, because I wanted those readers to be able to get something that was kind of, you know, related to that book, and then also kind of something for the next book I had coming out that's another YA psychological thriller / horror book. And so that was really why I put this together, and that was why I allowed the library requests, because those are free to submit. It doesn't cost anyone any money. They don't have to pre-order my book, to make sure that people people that were excited about Tender Beasts and had appreciated Delicious Monsters could still get stuff, even if they didn't have the funds to pre-order. So for some authors, like when their goal is like very strictly sales, they may not offer the library campaign option, because of course you don't make any money from that, as opposed to the pre-orders. But my goal was not sales, and so for me, that is why I put that together. However, I will say I did have a secondary goal, which is related to sales. And so essentially it was really to kind of drum up excitement for the book, and to try and kind of push that excitement towards the launch. So kind of shortly before your book comes out and the launch of your book, from what I've gleaned, seem to be the times that are really important to publishers. And those first week sales especially can be very important to them. And so for me, like the secondary goal of this campaign was trying to kind of drum up that excitement closer to launch. And that was kind of what I hoped that pre-order section would do, is that it would get people to go and pre-order the book, or to go get the book in the first week. And so people that might have been like, oh yeah, no, for sure, I'm anticipating that book, I'm gonna get to it. It was like a little bit of a nudge to like do it earlier and to go and do it a little bit faster. And even with the library request, to kind of like request it right off the bat, like the more people that are requesting it, the more copies the library will purchase in order to kind of try and meet that demand. And so if you have a book come out and you have a really long hold time, it also kind of like makes people, I don't know, I feel like it makes people think, oh, that's like a really like big buzzy book, like people are so excited for that book, like I have to like get that book too. And maybe some people that like would have waited for the library, maybe they'd be like, you know what, I'll just like pre-order, or I'll just buy or whatever. And so that was kind of like the secondary goal. I really wanted to just give the gift, but as a secondary goal to try and get people to do stuff a little bit earlier, because of the kind of publisher weight of those first week sales. And on to the statistics, which I'm going to read from my phone because I don't want to memorize numbers. Anyway, so I got 160 entries into the campaign. 36 of them were library requests and 123 of them were pre-orders. And there was one null entry, just like the person they submitted like something that was not a screenshot. And because it was just one, I ended up just sending it to them anyway, because I figured they just like misunderstood or like got confused. Like I did it as like a good faith thing. So I guess you could, count them as a library request, but they didn't, I'm not sure what they did. They might have not done anything. But anyway, so that's what the stats were, just generally for entries. And I was actually really surprised by this. I was really, really surprised, because I thought because I had a free option available, like being able to do that library request, I assumed that most of the entries would be the library request because it was the free option. But actually, like most of the entries, like by and large, were those pre-orders, which was like a pleasant surprise. I was like, oh, okay. And it made me, and that was something that I was like excited to share in this video, because I think, you know, maybe if you're really wanting to get sales, I don't know if some authors are like hesitant to offer the library request section. Like if they really want to get those pre-orders, they might want to just concentrate to pre-orders. But I don't know, that kind of made me feel like it's worth it to have the library request option, because it might not even end up being that many people, but who knows, it's like different for different people and that sort of thing. But I found that to be a very pleasant surprise. And then also I'll say the Canadian versus American entries, because I made this open to the US and Canada only. It just was not financially feasible to do international. It would have skyrocketed my already high costs and I just couldn't afford it, unfortunately. But 28 of the entries were from Canadians and the remaining 132 were from people in the US, which makes sense to me because even though I myself am Canadian, like from Canada and stuff, and I do get like a good push of my books in Canada as well, I do find that my audience tends to, by and large, be people in the States. So it wasn't super surprising to me that it ended up going that way, which is why I made the whole campaign open to the US and Canada. I think if it was Canada only, it would have just been like a much smaller campaign, and I know that so much of my audience is in the US. But that was basically it for the statistics. And now to talk about the mistakes and fumbles, the places where I didn't really go so great for the campaign, that I would certainly try and avoid in the future, or like correct in the future. Yeah, that I would try and do better, places that this did not go well. And the first was the Google form. So me as a person that has never done a pre-order campaign, in the past, what I had seen some other authors do in their pre-order campaigns is like when they did their their Google form, they told people to put their full address with line breaks in one section. And I was like, oh, okay. And I assumed that meant that it made it easier to like do the address stuff or the mail merge thing, which I wasn't really familiar with very much, but I was like, okay, yeah, I kind of get it. That's probably why they do that. And then I didn't research actually anything. I was just like, other authors did it, so I should do it. Wrong. Very, very wrong. So what happened with this is that, for one, a bunch of people didn't understand the instructions. So the instructions were like to put your full address, including your name, in one section. And I had like a little example above, but it's just, you know, things get lost in the sauce. And so a bunch of people didn't put their names. So then I had to search through like their screenshot and like look at their email address and try and guess at what their name was and like put that on the address and like hope that it worked out. And then also it did not make the mail merge easier. It in fact made it more complicated and difficult. So yeah, in the future, if I did that again, what I would do with the Google form is that I would make as many fields as possible so that everything can be very clear to the person filling out the form. And it does actually just make the mail merge easier. It's also nice for me because when I'm trying to do a video like this and I want to do my little statistics, then I could easily kind of search for things instead of kind of manually doing it, which is what I did. I manually had to count a bunch of these. So yeah, it just created more work. And I think I was worried that if I had too many fields, people would get like fatigued filling out the form or they wouldn't want to do it. Just forget it. Do all of the fields, because yeah, for me, it made the mail merge way easier, which is like the mail merge is like basically like taking all of the Excel data and like putting it onto like a format so that you can print out address labels. And yeah, it's just, I don't know, different strokes for different folks, but for me, I would not do that in the future. And the second kind of foible for me was signing the book plates. So I signed them with a Sharpie. I haven't signed book plates in a long time, so I just like forget shit. So I signed the book plate and then I immediately stacked them on top of each other. And what happened then was they all got smudged. They all got smudged. and I didn't realize that until I'd signed like 100 book plates. So thankfully I ordered extra, but like right off the bat I lost 100 book plates. And like if I had not ordered extra, if I had ordered the exact amount, it would have really screwed me. It would have really screwed me. So that sucked. And so yeah, that's something it was a little bit frustrating, but I moved past it. And then the kind of last foible / difficulty was the prize pack. So I knew that the prize pack stuff was going to be difficult because I had never screen printed anything before. And I did one kind of test screen print with one color, and I was like, oh, okay, yeah, no, that was pretty simple. I can do it. And it is, in fact, pretty simple to screen print a shirt with one color, but that is not what I was doing. I'm screen printing here with 2 colors, and potentially 3 as well, because for just the way like shirts worked out, the green sweatshirt only goes up to a certain size, and I wanted to make sure that I could offer larger size options, which meant that it would switch to black. Like I would do a black shirt, and of course if I'm going to do a black shirt, it's not going to have the green background, so then I also have to do green. And I had severely underestimated how difficult it is to layer colors in a screen print. Yeah, just like super underestimated it, and so it was very, very hard. And I did it, and everything worked out, and it's great, and that's wonderful, but it was so hard. It was so hard, and I just feel like yeah, the prize pack was really difficult, and I don't know why I decided my beginner craft that I had started doing was what I should offer, but that was what I did, and so that was hard, and I don't know that I recommend just like doing a prize packed item with something that you haven't done often yet. Yeah, so that was the last kind of mistake / foible. And now for the positive outcomes, which I like to say after whatever mistakes / foibles I have, because then it makes it seem a little bit better. But a big positive for me was the enthusiasm. It was really, really exciting to see people be like just so pumped up about the pre-order campaign and all of the little swag items. And it was also super exciting, like all the people that tagged me after they got their items, to say like, you know, how much it made their day and how excited they were to get it. And like some people, it seemed like gifted the pre-order items to like other people, like that sort of thing. And so some people also like got the items without knowing that that was coming to them, so then it was a really nice surprise for them, which is super sweet. Like some people are so cute. But it was just, you know, it was very sweet, it was very nice, and I really appreciated it. And it really did feel like I had accomplished what I wanted to do, which was to give back something to the people that have supported my foray into horror and psychological thriller and YA, especially coming off doing a very different genre. Well, doing like fantasy sci-fi, there's supernatural elements to the books, but still it kind of felt like I was in some ways asking readers to take a little bit of a gamble, and so I really just appreciated them. If you are one of those readers, I appreciate you also, and so it was just like very sweet to see all the enthusiasm, which was just like, it was really exciting. It made, even though some things were very, very hard, some things were very, very hard, it made it like so worth it. And like the prize pack winner was very sweet. Like they sent me a photo of them wearing their like sweatshirt and like holding their, you know, prize pack items, and like how happy they were about it. And they were like going to a writing group, they were talking about they were gonna wear their sweatshirt to their writing group, and like I just find that that's so sweet, and I really appreciated that, and it really like warmed the cockles of my heart, and like it really did just like make me very happy. And so it was nice. It felt very nice to have done that and like have people appreciate it. So I really, really enjoyed that. That was great. And then another positive outcome, the amount of pre-orders. I really, really was shocked by the amount of pre-orders that came through, which I like, so Also very much, just to make clear, very much appreciate the library requests. Those are absolutely fantastic too. That's why I had them in there. But yeah, I think I just expected most people to do the library request, which I was excited about because I love libraries. And in Canada, I do make money off of library borrowing. Yeah, I do in fact get government money from that, and so I do in a way still make money off of that. And also if the library buys a copy of the book, I also obviously make money off of that. And I love supporting libraries, and so of course I'm very happy about all of those. And so I just kind of thought more people would do that, and so it was a big surprise that more people had pre-ordered the book. So I really, yeah, that was like a very nice surprise. And then the final positive outcome was the packing of the orders was actually so fun. So I'm the sort of person, I watch a lot of like YouTubers that are like small business owners. So they like have like art, you know, like they like make little prints, or they make like enamel pins and like, you know, different like merch things based off of their own art, which I've always loved watching. I've always wished that I like had the artistic talent to like open my own little like small business thing. And like, you know, I have years of like going to like anime conventions and like the One of a Kind show and stuff. Like I love artisan goods, and so it like, you know, it's a hobby of mine to watch those videos of people like packing and putting together their stuff and doing all their little branding things. And I was like, I would never open a shop. For one, I have already failed at that in the past. I used to have like a t-shirt business that I failed at very quickly. And also it's like a ton of work, so much work. So I would not do that in any capacity actually. It's just kind of a fantasizing thing. So it was really fun to pack the orders because I like felt like I was doing it. Like I felt like I was having my little dream of like being a little like small shop owner and like putting my little like, you know, my address labels. I put the little Bear Academy kind of logo on the side, and I got a stamp for my like PO box return address, and like, you know, putting them all into their little, what are the glassine bags so that they'd be waterproof. And like, I don't know, it was just very fun and cute, and like taking my bag to the post office. Like, I don't know, all of that stuff is very exciting to me. I also do really enjoy mindless repetitive tasks, and so I had a great time. I'd like watch videos and put on my audiobook, and so yeah, I just had a wonderful time doing the envelope stuffing. I thought that was really fun. And I wanted to share a few tips of things that I've learned just in case you're considering doing a pre-order campaign yourself. Of course, there are the quick learn from my mistakes things, from my mistakes and foibles. Figure out the best way to put together your Google form based on how you're going to use that data. Don't stack your book plates on top of one another right away. And third, maybe consider, if you're going to do a prize pack thing, doing items that are easy for you to do instead of ones that are difficult and you're just starting with your hobby. So I'm going to say those ones off the top. But some other things that I found helpful, I did purchase glassine bags. So glassine bags, these are recyclable and they are water resistant. And so because I knew I was sending these through regular letter mail, there was like a chance that they might get wet, and I didn't want the like paper goods to get ruined, and so I would put them in the glassine bags and then put that in the envelope. And so that's kind of an easy but still like environmentally friendly, because at least it's recyclable, way to protect the goods. I also got an address stamp, and I did Avery labels for the address labels, but you may also have a printer that can just print directly onto the envelope. My printer technically could do this, but I was like feeling nervous about like trying it and doing all of that stuff, and so I decided to skip it. But my partner was doing something else separately where he tried out printing on the envelopes, and it worked perfectly. So you can in fact do it. I have, what is the printer that I have? It's like it's not an inkjet. What is it? one of those other ones. Epson, oh, it's an Epson EcoTank. There you go. Epson EcoTank printer, but there are a bunch of printers that can do it, especially if you have like a laser printer. So that might be an easier option than doing the address label thing. I also recommend checking and double checking the standards for letter mail where you live. Where I am, there is a certain weight and size your envelope has to be considered letter mail, which means that you can send it out with a single stamp, which is ideal. But I would definitely check like with how much stuff you are planning to mail that you are within those, because I was mailing some extra stuff to my relatives, and so I had to put like kind of like two amounts, like 2 servings of pre-order goods in one envelope, and the weight did in fact go over the letter mail standard, and so I had to put 2 stamps on that one. So it kind of just like depends on how much you're wanting to give out, because I know people say paper goods because it's light and that sort of thing, but just like double check, because there is an amount of paper goods that might be going over the standards, and you don't want to think that you're going to spend 1 stamp on something and then suddenly you're spending 2 stamps for however many pre-orders. I would also recommend reminding people on social media about the campaign very, very often, because not everyone is seeing every post, and it may feel repetitive on your end, but like when I did my post, which I did like about a 2-month campaign, and for pretty much all of those social media posts, I would tack on a little just like couple sentences that was like, hey, did you know there's a pre-order campaign? You can get swag, check the link in my bio. And I would post and remind people in my story. And up until the very last day, I got people that were responding to my story like, oh, I didn't know this was happening, even though I had been posting about it for 2 months. So for me, it was like, I'm telling you about this all the time, but it's not the same for people on social media. Like, people might just be catching things. And so I do think I would remind people very often about the fact that you were doing this, and it can be like what I did, which is I just like added a quick couple sentences whenever I posted about the book, just to make sure people knew what was going on. And lastly, there are like ways to cut down on things, for example, like shipping costs. So if you have a local indie bookstore, you can partner with them and you can have people make their orders through that bookstore, which is a great way to support indies as well. And then they can package your pre-order stuff into that book order, and that way you are not paying to ship them. That is a great like thing that a lot of people take advantage of. The reason that I didn't do this is because my closest indie bookstore is 4 hours away. And the indie bookstores that I've actually like made connections with are in Toronto, so they are 8 hours away. And so there was no kind of easy way for me to do it, and I knew that if I paid to ship all of my items to them, there couldn't be an expectation that, oh, ship me back any extras, or like if they're a little bit short, oh, I'll just ship more. Like, it would have just like brought up the cost. It would have made things difficult. And so for me, because I don't have a local indie, it was just better for me to do all the mailing myself. But if you do have one that is close by, then yeah, it would be very easy for you to just kind of be like, hey, how many orders do you have? Okay, I'll order that much. Let me go send it to you. Oh, you have extras, I'll take it back, that sort of thing. But that's kind of definitely a way that you can help cut down on those costs. And that way you might have something that's a little bit more equal to what you're spending and what you would get for a pre-order. Would I recommend doing a pre-order campaign? And I would say this really depends. It really depends. And I think it depends on what your goal is. I think if you are doing a pre-order campaign with a goal of kind of, making a lot of sales, I don't know that I would necessarily say to go for it. And for this is like, there's a few reasons. For one, there's that reason I said about like how much you make on a book sale versus how much you spend to do the pre-order campaign. Oftentimes you are going to be spending more than you would get back. And so it's kind of a little bit, I don't know, to me it's a little bit of a strange decision. But I know for some people it might just be like, I need those sales, I need to drum them up. I don't mind that I lose money because I want my publisher to be like, wow, look at like how many sales they're drumming up. But I feel like even in that case, I find it very difficult because in order to kind of capture people who are outside of your reader base, because really mostly what you're going to get people like entering your pre-order campaign are probably going to be people that are already following you on social media. They're already kind of clued in. They potentially were already going to pre-order without any prompting anyway, because they're already part of your circle. And to me, I would imagine that for it to be worth it, you need to capture people outside of that circle. And for that, you need to have like a really enticing sort of pre-order item. And like the more you get to that, to me, the more kind of expensive it becomes. And even considering the cost that I spent, that was like, I was doing everything like kind of I was just using my cover art, or I was putting things together myself. Like I hadn't even gotten to the point of like where you might pay to commission an artist, which would drive up your costs even more. I find it very difficult personally to understand or see the kind of I guess the financial benefit of doing that, or even kind of the sales benefit of the pre-order campaign. Yeah, I just kind of find it difficult. I think it's good in like pushing that audience that you have to do things early so that you can get the benefit of those sales, but I don't know that I would necessarily kind of recommend putting yourself out for it. I feel like doing a pre-order campaign, at least in the traditional publishing kind of lens, I feel like it's best for people whose goals are different. So if it's just something fun that you want to do to give back to readers, if it's part of your kind of like, I don't know, I guess social media campaign of like getting people interested and excited about your book, if it's a way to kind of get that readership, that audience that's already plugged in, to kind of get to the bookstore a little bit faster, like I find that those goals make a little bit more sense to me. For me personally, I don't think I would ever say to someone, yeah, you should do a pre-order campaign if you want to get sales. I just feel like I personally do not have any information that has ever communicated to me that like doing a pre-order campaign is a great way to drum up sales. And in fact, over the years, I have usually heard the opposite. I've usually heard people say not to do a pre-order campaign because you are going to lose money, which to me is a given. And so it's really something to do, I would say, if it's just something that you want to do for fun. And so those are the people that I would recommend it to. If they're really excited and they want to get all this character art and they want to like make prints and they want to like be able to have something to ship out to people that are excited for the book, to me, those are the people where I would be like, yeah, for sure, like go for it, pre-order campaign. But I think if someone came to me and they were like, I really want to sell more books, should I do a pre-order campaign? I would be like, no. I would think there were better ways to use the money to try and do that than to do it through a pre-order campaign. And would I personally consider doing a pre-order campaign again? This also really depends. It really depends. I think for me, I really have to think about it in terms of like the benefit of it and like what, not just like what am I offering to readers, but like also what am I personally getting out of it, because I'm making an investment. And so those are the things I have to consider. And so I was thinking, for example, of A Mastery of Monsters, which is my next YA that's coming out. It's a dark academia fantasy. I was like, oh, would I want to do a pre-order campaign for A Mastery of Monsters? I've already commissioned some art for it. So I do in fact already have art kind of ready to go, that I was really planning to use more as like for, I guess, kind of general promotion, and like handing out at events, that sort of thing. And I think I would probably not do a campaign for the first in a series. And I think it's just because people don't really know anything about the book. And I think what worked really well for the Delicious Monsters Tender Beast thing is that I think a lot of people that were entering it were people that like had read Delicious Monsters or were like about to read. And so I was kind of like bringing in people who were already like fans a little bit of a way of the books, even though one had not come out yet, just that sort of genre. And I think about, you know, like character cards and that sort of thing. And I just I don't know. I think for me, I was like, does it mean anything before you've read the book? And I think because my goal is more centered around like rewarding readers and like giving something back to people that are like big fans of the book, I feel like I would be more inclined to do a pre-order campaign for the second book in the series, because then I'm kind of pulling in people who are already fans of the first book, because otherwise why are you pre-ordering the second book, or to be fans of the first book. And like subsequent books and series tend to like need a little bit more push and support, and so I would see more of an advantage of doing it for something like that than the very first book, when like nobody's read it, nobody knows about the world, nobody knows about the characters, nobody has any attachment, and so yeah, I think I would struggle to see the point in doing like a pre-order gift campaign for it in that case. So I feel like it would really depend on how I felt and like what I thought it would be. Of course, if my publisher was doing something, then I wouldn't care because it's not my money. So anything could happen. But when it's my money, I have to be a little bit more strategic about it. And for me as an author, like Tender Beast is my fourth YA novel, my fifth novel overall, and it took me that long to ever do a pre-order campaign, and I've never had like, otherwise it's been fine. I don't look at my sales anymore, so I really can't tell you if it made any sort of difference, but I just feel like it was never necessary for me, and so I don't see it suddenly becoming necessary to me now just because I've done it once. But I think I've got some good learnings. I think I would probably be a little bit more concentrated on paper goods, and like maybe like a small prize pack thing, maybe like less like high ticket items like the embroidered patch, but I don't know, we'll see. Never say never. And that's it for this video. If you have any questions about pre-order campaigns or like what I did, or any sort of questions or comments for me, put them in the comments and I will respond as best as I can. If you like this video, please give it a thumbs up. If you haven't subscribed already, please subscribe, and thank you so much for watching. Bye! If you like this video, please give it a thumbs up. If you haven't subscribed already, please subscribe, and thank you so much for watching.